Let's talk about the Sri Yantra. The Sri Yantra is a map of the psyche becoming whole, drawn in geometry instead of words, and it shows how consciousness organizes itself from fragmentation to coherence. The outer square is the boundary of the nervous system, the container that keeps experience from overwhelming you, while the lotus rings represent layers of perception and emotion opening outward, like senses and relational fields. And as you move inward, the interlocking upward and downward triangles depict the masculine and feminine currents of the mind. Analysis, structure, and feeling flow repeatedly intersecting, which is exactly what happens during psychological integration when logic and emotion stop competing and begin informing each other. Each intersection point functions like a part or sub-self, protectors, children, thinkers, fillers, none erased, none dominant, all held in relationship. And the reason the geometry looks so complex is because the psyche is complex until coherence emerges, which is why staring at the Sri Yantra can feel disorienting at first and then strangely calming because your brain is recognizing an image of its own reorganization. The journey inward mirrors therapy and integration work itself, moving from the noisy multiplicity of external identity toward the bindu, the central point, which is not the ego but the observing self that can witness all parts without being hijacked by any of them. Rawr. Okay. So the same center people describe when they say they finally feel grounded or present. Importantly, the bindu is infinitesimal, reminding us that wholeness isn't loud or dramatic. It's stable, quiet, and generative. And when the psyche organizes around the center, parts don't disappear, they orbit, just like integration, not killing anyone but giving everyone shared access to the will. Psychologically, meditating on the Sri Yantra trains the brain toward coherence by repeatedly signaling safety, symmetry, and balance to the nervous system, teaching the mind how to hold opposites without collapse, which is why across cultures it's been used not as decoration but as a technology of integration, a visual language showing the psyche how to remember itself as one field rather than a war zone of competing selves. So there are 9 interlocking triangles, which is critical because 9 represents completion through experience rather than perfection. 3 times 3, or triple darkness, knowing itself through repetition. Or 4 triangles point upward, representing the active, discriminating, penetrating current of mind, often called masculine, but more accurately the executive, electrical, focusing principle. And 5 triangles point downward, representing the receptive, emotional, magnetic, subconscious, and body-based intelligence, which already tells you something profound about the psyche. The subconscious and emotional field is larger than the conscious executive mind, even though modern culture pretends the opposite. These triangles interlock so tightly that none can exist alone, illustrating that thought without feeling becomes sterile and cruel, while feeling without structure becomes chaotic and overwhelming. And psychologically, this mirrors how integration works. Neither logic nor emotion is removed, but they are woven so precisely that every point of intersection becomes a functional node of awareness, which is why the Sri Yantra contains 43 smaller triangles in total, each one representing a localized state of consciousness or part, not unlike sub-personalities, neural assemblies, or archetypical roles, all nested inside a single coherent field. The central upward pointing triangle, often called the womb or yoni space, despite its upward orientation, represents the moment consciousness becomes self-aware without splitting, the point where agency arises but is still rooted in the whole. And it sits directly around the bindu, the infinitesimal dot at the center that is not a thing but a source, the witnessing self that does not act, react, or fragment, but from which all action emerges. So psychologically, this middle triangle is the first stable sense of I am that is not defensive, not performative, and not fused to trauma. The reason integration feels threatening to parts is encoded right here, because as awareness moves toward the center, the outer triangles do not disappear but lose exclusivity, no longer allowed to pretend they are the whole. And this redistribution of power feels like death to any part that once ruled alone. I know that's right. The numerical structure reinforces this. 1 bindu, pure awareness. 3 primary forces, knower, knowing, known. 9 triangles, experience differentiation. 43 sub-expressions, complex lived identity. All held within symmetry so exact that the nervous system reads it as safety, coherence, and inevitability. In other words, the Sri Yantra is showing that the psyche is not healed by flattening or simplification, but by precise relationship where every force has a place. No force is banished, and the center remains unoccupied by fear, which is why meditating on it doesn't hypnotize the mind but educates it, silently teaching your internal system how to organize itself without violence, hierarchy, or collapse. So I give y'all the homework of watching the movie called Split, because it will show all different parts that we carry, and in an or unintegrated system, what it might start to look like, but the power you can have when you start to integrate all of yourselves. Okay, and then do some work, do some research on multiple personality disorder as well. You might get a better understanding of all of it. But the psyche lives in the spinal cord. It is all of the chakras coming together. Boom, you become the center. You become pure awareness. You become your higher self. You have to integrate all your psyche parts.